I didn't hear him come in. The sound of the faucet running and the soft clinking of a spoon in a cup were the only things keeping me from breaking down completely. I stood there, in the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter like it was the only thing holding me upright. My shoulders shook with quiet sobs, my face turned toward the window so no one could see. But I wasn't hiding well, not really. You can't hide heartbreak in your own home. Not when it seeps into every breath you take. It had been a long week. Actually, it had been a long year. One of those stretches of time that feels like it's determined to break you down in the smallest, most painful ways. Arguments that never really ended, silent treatments that lasted too long, a growing distance I tried so hard to pretend wasn't there. I told myself I was just tired, that we were both under stress, that maybe it was just a phase. But deep down, I knew better. You always do. That night, I found myself alone in the kitchen again, the place that used to be full of life, dinners that turned into late-night conversations, wine glasses clinking, laughter echoing off the walls. But now, the walls just listened quietly as I cried. I wasn't expecting anyone to be up. I thought I had a few quiet minutes to myself before I could pull it together and go back upstairs like nothing happened. That's when I felt it. A hand, gentle but certain, rested on my shoulder. Not in a way that startled me, but in a way that paused everything inside me. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. And for a moment, I didn't know what to do. But I didn't pull away. He didn't say anything. And I didn't turn around. We just stood there, in that tiny, quiet kitchen that had held so many versions of us over the years. I felt the warmth of his hand through my sweater, steady and patient, like he wasn't there to fix anything, just to be there. And somehow, that made all the difference. There's something about being seen at your lowest, not when you're dressed up and smiling, but when your heart is raw and your face is streaked with tears. And in that moment, he saw me. Really saw me. Not the version I tried to hold together every day, but the one I kept hidden even from myself. It should have made me feel exposed, but it didn't. It felt safe. I had so many questions running through my head. Why now? Did he finally realize something? Or was it just a passing moment of kindness that wouldn't change anything in the morning? I didn't have the answers. I only knew that something in the way he touched my shoulder, in the way he didn't rush to speak, made me stay still. It wasn't forgiveness, and it wasn't a promise, but it was something. Maybe it was the start of understanding. Or maybe it was the last bit of comfort before everything really fell apart. I didn't know. All I knew was that in that single, quiet second, I didn't feel alone. And then, he spoke. Just one word. Just my name. And the way he said it, it broke something open in me that I'd been holding shut for far too long. But before I could respond, before I could even turn to face him, something happened, something that changed the entire course of that night. And that's where everything began to unravel. Because sometimes, the moment you think you're being pulled back together, is the same moment everything truly begins to fall apart. My name hung in the air like it had its own weight, and I still didn't turn around. I was afraid that if I looked at him, I'd fall apart all over again, worse this time. But even more than that, I was afraid of what I'd see in his eyes. Regret? Pity? Or something colder, like indifference. I couldn't take that. Not after everything. He stood there behind me for what felt like a full minute. I could hear his breathing, calm and steady, like he'd practiced how to be this composed. I, on the other hand, was falling apart quietly, tears slipping down my face and landing on the counter. I felt ashamed of crying in front of him, but too tired to care anymore. You see, it wasn't just one fight or one bad day that brought us here. It was everything layered on top of everything else. Missed calls. Words said in anger that couldn't be taken back. The way we slowly stopped talking about the little things, like how our days went, or what we were dreaming about for the future. And then there were the secrets. Or maybe just things we stopped sharing. But either way, the silence between us had grown louder than anything we ever argued about. I don't know when I first started to feel alone, even with him right there in the same room. Maybe it was the night he came home late and didn't offer an explanation. Or the morning I woke up and realized I'd stopped waiting for him to hold me. These things don't happen all at once. It's like a slow leak you don't notice until you're standing in a flood. And now here we were, a woman crying in the kitchen, and a man behind her who used to be her everything. Still not speaking. Still waiting. I wanted to ask him why he came down. Why he touched me. Why he said my name like it still mattered. But the words were stuck somewhere behind the lump in my throat. So instead, I finally turned around. He looked different, somehow. Not physically, but in his eyes, there was something softer, something quieter than I remembered. But also something unreadable, like he was carrying his own weight that he hadn't shared with me yet. We stared at each other for a long second, like we were both trying to figure out who we had become in each other's absence. He opened his mouth to speak again, but before he could say anything, a sharp knock echoed from the front door. We both jumped slightly, startled. Who would come by this late? It was almost midnight. He gave me a glance, one I couldn't read, and stepped out of the kitchen to check. I stayed rooted to the spot, my stomach turning. A moment passed. Then another. I heard the door open, and then silence. No voices. No footsteps. Just silence. I wiped my face quickly and moved to the edge of the hallway, peeking out. He was standing completely still, staring at whoever, or whatever, was outside. I couldn't see past him, but I saw his hand clench slightly at his side. Who is it? I asked, my voice low, shaking. He didn't answer. Not at first. Then, he turned his head just enough and said, It's someone I didn't expect to see again. The way he said it sent a chill up my spine. I didn't ask more. I couldn't. My heart was already beating too fast. Because deep down, I had a feeling that the knock on that door wasn't random. And that whoever was standing there wasn't just here for him. They might have been here for both of us. I stayed in the hallway, frozen, listening to the way his breath shifted. He didn't step outside, and whoever was at the door didn't speak either, at least not loud enough for me to hear. The silence felt heavier than anything, like the calm before something awful. I wanted to walk over and look for myself, but something told me to wait. There was something in the way he stood, like he wasn't just surprised, he was afraid. Eventually, he closed the door slowly, quietly. When he turned back to me, his face was pale. He didn't say anything at first. Just walked past me, heading toward the kitchen again. I followed, heart pounding. Who was it? I asked. He hesitated, then said, It was someone from before. A friend. Kind of. That word, before, hit me wrong. We didn't talk much about the time before us. I only knew bits and pieces of his past. Enough to think I understood him, but not enough to really know what he had been through. Or who he had left behind. I watched him as he poured himself a glass of water with shaking hands. Do you want to tell me what's going on? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked up at me with that same unreadable expression, but there was something else there now, guilt. They're in trouble, he finally said. And I think I'm the reason why. That was all he gave me. Nothing more. And I didn't press, not yet. Because even though I wanted answers, I also knew he wasn't ready to give them. Or maybe he didn't trust me enough to. And that hit deeper than I expected. It made me wonder how far apart we'd really drifted. Not just emotionally, but in the things we didn't say, the truths we didn't share. Maybe the distance between us had been more than just missed conversations. Maybe it had been built on secrets. That night, I barely slept. Every creak in the house made me sit up, thinking someone else might show up. And when I did drift off, I dreamed of shadows standing at the door, waiting. In the morning, I found his phone on the table, screen still lit from a message he must have read in the middle of the night. I didn't mean to look, but I did. You said you'd protect me. They're watching now. I didn't recognize the number. But the feeling in my chest tightened. He wasn't just keeping something from me. He was in the middle of something much bigger than I ever imagined. And somehow, I had already been pulled into it. The message on his phone kept replaying in my mind. They're watching now. I didn't know who they were, or why he'd promised to protect someone, but I could feel it. This wasn't something small. This was serious. Dangerous, even. And the worst part was, I didn't know where I fit into any of it. Was I part of the secret? Or just collateral damage? He came back into the room, catching me near the phone. He didn't say anything, just looked at me like he already knew I'd seen it. There was no use pretending. Who sent that? I asked. He didn't answer. Just sat down at the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. I should have told you everything a long time ago, he said finally. But I thought I was keeping you safe by staying quiet. Safe from what? I asked, voice sharper than I meant it to be. Because right now, I don't feel safe at all. He looked up at me then, eyes tired, like whatever this was had been following him for years. It started before I met you, he said. And I thought it was over. But they found me again. I wanted to yell, to demand answers, but something about the way he looked, like he was bracing for something awful, stopped me. You're scaring me, I whispered. I'm scared too, he admitted. The door knocked again. 3 short taps. No doorbell this time. We both froze. The timing was too exact. Too deliberate. I looked at him, waiting, but he didn't move. I walked slowly toward the window, heart in my throat, and peeked through the curtain. A dark car idled at the curb. 2 people stood just outside the door, dressed too clean, too formal for this neighborhood. One of them glanced up, directly at the window where I stood. They knew we were watching. And they weren't going away. Whatever secret he'd been hiding, it had just arrived on our doorstep. I stepped back from the window, heart pounding. They saw me, I said quietly. He didn't look surprised, just stood up and started pacing like he knew this moment was coming. I expected him to panic, to grab his phone, maybe even tell me to pack a bag. But instead, he just said, "We need to let them in." What? I stared at him, thinking he must be joking. You want to let them in? They're not here to hurt us. Not yet. But if we don't open the door, they'll think we're hiding something. I didn't know whether to trust his judgment or not after everything I'd just learned, or rather, hadn't learned. But before I could stop him, he was already walking toward the front door. My body moved on instinct, following close behind. He opened it. The taller one stepped forward, offering no greeting, no badge, just a low, firm voice. We need to talk. Inside. They walked in like they owned the place. No hesitation. No fear. But it was the second person, the one trailing behind, who made me stop cold. I recognized her. Not from real life, but from a photo. A picture I'd found once, shoved into the back of an old drawer in his desk. He said it was nothing. Just an old friend from a long time ago. But she wasn't just a friend. I could tell by the way her eyes lingered on him now, like they shared a history I'd never been part of. And then she looked at me. Smiled. I'm sorry we're meeting this way, she said gently. But he didn't tell you everything. Not about me. Not about you either. I felt the ground shift beneath me. Me? The way she said it, like I wasn't just a bystander in all of this. Like I was a part of the secret toy looked from her to him, waiting for an explanation, but his silence said more than words ever could. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched. He wouldn't look at me. That was when I knew she wasn't some random person from his past. She was the past. And somehow, I was tangled in it too. I don't understand, I said, voice trembling. She's your sister, the woman said softly, gesturing toward me. Half-sister. He didn't know when he met you. But I did. Everything blurred. My mind reeled. Sister? What kind of twisted secret was this? I stumbled back a step, trying to breathe. He finally spoke, voice raw. I didn't know at first. I swear. Your mother, she never told me everything. It wasn't until last year I started putting it together. But by then, she cut in, you were already too deep. You couldn't walk away. That was what the message meant. You said you'd protect me. It wasn't just about danger, it was about truth. A truth he'd buried. And I'd been living in it this whole time. He turned to me, eyes full of something close to panic. I never meant to hurt you. I didn't even know how to tell you. But it didn't matter anymore. Because just then, a phone buzzed on the table. Hers. She glanced at the screen and her face dropped. They found us. What? Who? The people watching, she said, her voice now sharp. We're not the only ones keeping secrets. And outside, that dark car that had once idled quietly, started to roll forward again. Only this time, it didn't stop at the curb. It headed straight for the house. Oh, and I had no idea what that meant.